Peace, family, and welcome to the Drapetomaniac Podcast. I'm Ayapo Yapa, the HDIC, that is, the head Drapetomaniac in charge. And we're here to have conversations on how to get off this plantation.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure that you listeners are listening to the Drapetomaniac Podcast on doayamedia.com. You are, right?
Have you ever seen the signs they used to have at gas stations or in front of fast food joints where the prices of the gas would change or this week's special would change, and someone would go into the elements and physically take the old letters down and put new ones up? I guess that's what our people need to start doing. Better yet, to keep up with the times, we can go digital like they did and just make it so that we could punch in some information and it would change the message immediately. You don't know what I'm talking about, do you? I'm talking about the signs we carry when we go out to march and protest. You know the ones. They say, justice for Trayvon Martin, justice for Tamir Rice, justice for Sandra Bland, justice for Philando Castile, justice for Breonna Taylor, justice for Michael Brown, justice for Tatiana Jefferson, justice for Walter Scott, justice for Jacob Blake, justice for... You get the idea. The list goes on and on. So I figure we just make the justice for signs and then have a digital display where the name goes so that we can change the names without having to go through the trouble of putting together a whole new poster board every time. Because as sure as you're listening to this, it won't be long before we need another one. I wouldn't be surprised if we got to the point where we may need to start changing the names mid-protest, because it's getting to the place where, for me at least, I'm losing count and I can't keep up. But this is the result of existing within a system that is powered by our failure, based on our oppression, and bent upon our destruction. Of late, I find that one of the fastest ways to trigger me is to say, police need more training, anger management, sensitivity training, and training in de-escalation. Really? Jacob Blake, a black man who was unarmed, was shot in the back several times in front of his children and is now in the hospital and paralyzed possibly for the rest of his life. A couple days later, Kyle Rittenhouse, a white guy, shows up with a weapon, kills 2 people, and injures one, and he's now in jail being charged. Not dead, no bullet holes in him. A person with a weapon who actually shot 3 people didn't seem to put the police in fear for their lives enough to shoot at him 41 times and hitting him with 19, as they did with Amadou Diallo, who was just holding a cell phone. On last week's podcast, I said I would be continuing what I was talking about as far as our people coming to seek a remedy from within this system, and the fact that as far as I'm concerned, there is no remedy but separating. And as much as I realize that for me to say that is far and away more easy to verbalize than to actually do, my point beyond that is more in lines with seeking to open the minds of those who are willing to consider it, at least. First and foremost, the need, and then the practicality of separating. If our people continue to operate on the mistaken premise that the only way for us to get out of this situation in which we've been forced is to look to the same individuals and the same system that forced us into this mess to get us out of it, that's fallacious. There's no way of ever being free of it if we continue in that thinking. And actually, as my wife woke me up to, many of our people have no desire whatsoever to separate. On the contrary, they see their highest goal as achieving full integration, the utopian dream of being recognized as equals and being part of and getting their piece of the American dream. We have as a goal reparations. Are our people owed reparations? Yes. Do we as a people, and I'm referring to descendants of enslaved Africans in America, deserve to be made whole? And by any measure of real justice, deserve it? Definitely yes. But will a system that won't even do anything for those to whom they have allowed privilege give us our just due? I believe not. And the more time we spend fooling around with them, the longer we spend languishing in our own despair and chasing our own tails, as opposed to actively seeking to escape and to put as much distance as humanly possible between this system, those who run it, and those who benefit from it, and ourselves. Until now, I was unable to put my finger on what exactly it was about the Black Lives Matter movement that bothered me and made me uncomfortable putting any support behind it. Because the fact is that I know Black lives do matter. Of course, Black lives matter. How could I possibly not agree with that, especially as a Black person? So what was my issue? It is the one thing that has become anathema to me, and that is constantly begging or appealing to white people for anything. And the Black Lives Matter movement is about the greatest manifestation of the bowed down Black mindset of, please white people stop killing us. Please white people see us as human. Please white people treat us with respect. Please white people see us. You younger people may not realize that the Black Lives Matter movement is nothing new. What was it originally? Look at old posters and sandwich boards and picket signs from the 60s. They say, I am a man. The I am a man slogan just turned into Black Lives Matter with a hashtag in front of it. Nothing new. And nothing has changed. We spent 50 plus years begging white people to see us. They didn't then, and they don't now. It is a useless waste of time, and frankly, even if it weren't a waste of time, my thought process behind that is that they are the ones who created this mess for our people to have to navigate. Their people created it, not ours. It is not for us to blow our time and our single life dealing with their imagined issues with us or spending our precious time trying to fix them. It is my position that we need to seek separation. I came across an article by Jason Silverstein and a short NPR interview. In that podcast, the discussion was on an article he wrote that was called, I Don't Feel Your Pain. In the article, he spoke to the fact that research shows that white people do not perceive that black people feel pain. The article states, quote, researchers at the University of Milano Bicocca showed participants, all of whom were white, video clips of a needle or an eraser touching someone's skin. They measured participants' reaction through skin conductance tests. Basically, whether their hands got sweaty, which reflected activity in the pain matrix of the brain. If we see someone in pain, it triggers the same network in our brains that activate when we're hurt. But people do not respond to the pain of others equally. In this experiment, when viewers saw white people receiving a painful stimulus, they responded more dramatically than they did for black people. The racial empathy gap helps explain disparities in everything from pain management to the criminal justice system. But the problem isn't just that people disregard the pain of black people. It's somehow even worse. The problem is that the pain isn't even felt. A recent study shows that people, including medical professionals, assume black people feel less pain than white people. The researchers asked participants to rate how much pain they would feel in 18 common scenarios. The participants rated experiences such as stubbing a toe or getting shampoo in their eyes on a 4-point scale, where 1 is not painful and 4 is extremely painful. Then they rated how another person, a randomly assigned photo of an experimental target, would feel in the same situations. Sometimes the target was white, sometimes black. In each experiment, the researchers found that white participants, black participants, and nurses and nursing students assumed that black people felt less pain than whites. So, did you ever wonder why the opioid epidemic took such a strong hold on the white community and minimally spread among black people? Now you know. For the very reasons just stated, doctors and dentists prescribing medications for their patients were prescribing more opioids to their white patients, and it ended up becoming an epidemic among them. They gave less or weaker pain medications to black patients because they were more interested in managing the pain of their white patients and felt that black people could just take it and deal with the pain. Well, that was one of the few times that these racist policies actually backfired and helped our people. The research also showed that black people perceive black people to feel less pain than white people. This, however, is not inherent in black people, but a learned response, which leads to our people being willing to rush to the defense of white people who seem to be in distress, while our own black people can be brutalized, and the most we'll do at times is to pull out a cell phone so we can post it later, or eventually say ultimately that we were somehow at fault for what happened to us. Thankfully, I think that's starting to happen among our people less and less, though. Although, I must admit that when I saw the black woman cop stroking Amber Geiger's hair, the black judge praying with her and comforting her, and finally, the brother of the man she murdered asking to hug her, I'm still sickened by the very thought of it. Would all these black people have reacted the same had Amber Geiger been LaQuisha Johnson? Or worse, Tyrone Jackson? I think we all know the answer to that. Tamir Rice, who was playing with a toy gun, was murdered within 2 seconds of cops getting out of their car. If you've never seen the video, watch it and count. It was 2 literal seconds. But Timothy McVeigh could blow up 168 people, including 19 children, in the Alfred P. Murrow building. James Egan Holmes murdered 12 people and injured over 60 at a movie theater. Dennis Rader murdered 10 people. And you could just keep going on and on with these white people. So what if they were finally executed? They lived to make it to court and get due process. While even the most minor interaction our people have with the police could just as well end up with us being tased, shot, or outright murdered. Sandra Bland, Samuel DuBose. I myself was surrounded by police a few years ago as I was doing nothing more than taking my morning walk. I was surrounded by 3 police cruisers and a paddy wagon, amounting to 8 cops with their hands on their weapons, ready for action, and just little old me with nothing. Though I obviously survived the ordeal, that's little consolation to me who still lives with the memory and the trauma of it. Every time I pass that spot when I'm driving, I think about what happened to me there. Every single time. After being held there on the street as people passed by on their way to work, it was morning rush hour. I'm sure people, some of whom likely recognize me because I walked that same route every morning at that same time every day. I stood there humiliated and would have definitely ended up in the back of that paddy wagon, headed downtown had I not had my ID on me, the one thing I always made sure I carried. Not that should have made any difference. I'm sure plenty of actual criminals have an ID on them when they're caught. In hindsight, I'm just now wondering and thinking about it for the first time. I wonder if, had there not been all this traffic and all these witnesses, if I would have ended up as a chalk outline. Maybe. And maybe it didn't make any difference at all. Who knows? For our people, it's a crapshoot. They used on me the standard line of, I fit the description of a suspect who had just robbed a giant eagle down the street. Really? I said to the cops at the time, the man who committed the robbery was wearing a red shirt and black sweatpants. They said they didn't have that many details. Of course, that was a lie. If they didn't have that many details, then how could I possibly have fit the description? It was obvious I was just being harassed. Later that day when I researched it, I looked at the surveillance pictures of the person who allegedly robbed the store. He was a black man, wearing a yellow long-sleeve shirt, blue jeans, and had a full head of hair. It also said that he drove away. I was wearing a short-sleeved t-shirt, black sweatpants, and bald, and was wearing a cap, and was on foot. But I, quote-unquote, fit the description because I was black. That was the one and the only thing that the two of us had in common. At the same time that happened to me, it was in that same time period that Sandra Bland and Philando Castile and others of our people had been murdered by police in close order. So you can imagine how I was feeling. The fact that I came out alive means nothing. The problem is that when we live in a country, in a society that as a black person, when you have an interaction with cops, whether you come out alive or not, or at the very least not thrown in jail, is a roll of the dice, the luck of the draw. Is that the kind of life you want to live? Our energies would be better spent working to minimize our contact with our oppressors. If I know I'm dealing with a people who are hostile toward me and prone to angry outbursts and who lack the ability to comprehend that I even feel pain, then I'm not going to focus my time, energy, and effort on training them or seeking to educate them or trying to fix them so that I can feel more safe around them, while always having to watch them out of the corner of my eye just in case they pop off because they are so unpredictable. No. I'm going to put my time, energy, and effort into finding ways to minimize my contact with them, and eventually cut off contact if such a thing is possible, unless it's absolutely necessary, so that I can live in peace and safety. But if you're determined to somehow fix the people who are purposely oppressing you and going to extreme measures to live among them and integrate with them, then by all means, have at it. I just leave you with this single word of advice. The thing I was talking about at the beginning of the podcast about the digital display on the sign so that you can more easily change the names of the victims when you go on marches, hurry up and put one together. You're going to need it. Thank you for listening to this edition of the Drapetomaniac podcast. This is Ayapo Yapa, the HDIC, that is, the head Drapetomaniac in charge, wishing you peace and blessings, safety, security, and sanity until we meet again next week at this same time. Until then, I'll see you on the run.
And thank you again for listening to the Drapetomaniac podcast. Tune in next week at doiamedia.com. DOEAIAMEDIA.com. And again, we'll catch you on the run. Peace.